It is overtime here at Old Favorite Friday, where we continue the conversation on another classic beer, and that classic beer is Summerfest by Sierra Nevada. Now, Ralph, this is an incredible beer, a beer that's been around for a long time, was brewed back for the first time in 1991 from my research. And this beer was actually, they had kind of thought about discontinuing it a year or so ago, and the upheaval from people that love this beer because it's a classic American craft beer led them to keep the beer in circulation and bring the beer back, which is wonderful. I think I might have missed it last year, unfortunately, if they had a wide release of it, or maybe it didn't come to Florida, I'm not sure. But thrilled to have it here. I also have to mention that Sierra Nevada has now been featured 5 times on Old Favorite Friday, so the first 5-timer ever, which goes to show you how much we love the beers from Sierra Nevada. This is it's a Pilsner, right? So it should have a nice hop profile. You're my hop guy. Tell me a little bit about this beer.
Yeah. So first thing I want to say is I do agree with you in the way that I love Sierra Nevada. I was actually drinking it this weekend, so just get that out of the way. But so yeah, it's awesome that you mentioned how long they've been brewing this for, because when I tried it, that was one of the first things I noticed and even talked about. Is it, to me, is a classic Pilsner, but like a lot of time when you say that, you think old, you think of like, it doesn't have the best connotation, but no, to me, growing up when I did, this is one of the best Pilsners I've had in a very long time, because it's got that, sweet but clean malt backbone, but all the hop character is still there. Like a lot of our Pilsners, and you can even look it up, a lot of breweries have talked about, they've tried to like breed out some of that hop character just because people don't want that. Mm-hmm. But this is like your old school 90s, you're hanging out with your family and you get a sip of beer or something. This is like all those traditional noble hops, that earthy, that grassy. You could blindfold somebody and you would know exactly what this beer is, and I think they just nailed every aspect of it.
So it's a classic style Pilsner in your estimation. It gives you those noble hop varietal flavors. I also think there's a nice little balance of sweetness here. I mean, when I stick my nose in this, I get fresh baked bread. I even get like almost a little bit of like a vanilla here. There's a maltiness here that is really, really nice and subtle and well placed. It is not the crispest beer in the world because of that, but it does finish dry. It does have all that nice herbal and classic hop aroma and flavor. So a really well-rounded beer, right?
Yeah, and it's kind of, you put it perfectly, because they've managed to get this to be a chuggable, kind of crushable beer, because if you were to probably take gravity on this, I would be surprised if it isn't just dried out, but they balance the malt in such a way that you don't feel like you're losing anything. Sometimes that's when you hear people talk like, oh, it's a thin beer, this and that. No, you would never know in that sense, but you could just get like a 12-pack of these and be like, oh, I just had like 6 of these.
Often we use the term clean when describing lagers, and a good friend of Old Favorite Friday and Barrel of Monks hates using the term, Mike Urevich hates the term clean in describing beers. He says that's not a description. I think sometimes clean is thought of as being like almost flavorless. Mm-hmm. Like, it doesn't have a follow through, it doesn't have a finish. It's just really, really smooth. This beer is not clean in that sense, in the fact that it gives you a nice residual aftertaste of that noble hop character and a little bit of sweet malt. I think that's a really good thing, right? I don't think clean's a bad word when you're describing beer, but I think when you're looking for a Pilsner in a classic style, you want a little bite, and it's got a little bite.
Yeah, and if anything, what I would say is, even like, because I do tend myself to use clean a lot, what I mean is there's plenty of beers where it has like aspects of a style. So let's say you're looking for a Pilsner and it might have the hops, or it might have that, super drinkability where it's like that crackery malt. But then there's certain off things like, oh, maybe it's too much sulfur, too much this. Where this is a beer where it doesn't have any of that. So it's checked the boxes of, it's got the malt balance, it's got, the hops in the forefront. You can drink it, but just on the back end you get a bitterness. So I guess if anything, I should say it's lacking anything off. But yeah, that's when I say something like it's a clean beer. I mean, this is a beer that I find it'd be hard pressed to be like, oh, it's good, but here's my critique. There's really not much.
Well, that's one of the things about so many of the beers we feature on Old Favorite Friday, is that we tend to drink beers that tick all the boxes, mm-hmm. right? There's a reason why they're classic. There's a reason why they stand the test of time. There's a reason why people go back to them again and again. There's a reason why brewers like yourself will say, well, we're going to brew a Pilsner, an American Pilsner. Let's try this. This is one of the beers you would go pick up at the store, sit around with a bunch of brewers and say, okay, what do we like about this? What do we like about this? We're never going to pick a beer that doesn't tick all those boxes. We're never going to pick a beer that is lopsided and is all hop bitterness or all big malt forward. And that's one of the great things about the beers that we feature on Old Favorite Friday in a beer like Summerfest. I'm also picking up now, just as it's warming up a little bit, I'm getting a little lemon zest, which is a nice little citrus aspect that I wasn't picking up earlier. And it just goes to show you also that these beers will evolve, even a lager, as it gets a little bit warmer. It doesn't have to be chilled down to ice, right? We don't drink our beers like that.
Yeah.
That's going to suppress flavor and aroma. Not if you want to drink it that way, that's up to you. But we always recommend a little bit of, not freezing cold temperatures, because the beer is going to be more complex and more interesting when you try a beer that way. Ralph, anything else you want to say about Sierra Nevada, about Summerfest, about anything else?
I mean, they're a great company, and I love their beer and some of the research they put out. But one thing I wanted to mention, since we talked so much about it being classic, but also you just mentioned the lemon zest. It's interesting too, because it all depends on your point of view, because like they're using Sapphire and certain hops that when they came out, a couple decades or so, and some actually even more recently than that, they're not really uber traditional. So this isn't some like hop that they've been using for 80 years. But now by, today's stance, when a hop comes out every 5 minutes, that it's kind of interesting because we're talking about being classic, but it is, but it isn't. And as you picked up the lemon zest, they've kind of blended that all together in such a great way. So I just thought that was a interesting take when you mentioned that. So
well, classic now. I mean, the 1991. I mean, we're talking about over 30 years ago that this beer came out, and for us in the craft beer industry, they're sometimes talking about breweries that are hundreds of years old, and the old world stuff. It does kind of seem new, but time keeps marching on. There's lots and lots of changes. So this is going to be that established itself as being a classic beer and a classic style, but when it was probably originated, was actually doing some new innovative stuff. So, and then becomes famous. People absolutely love it. They don't want you to change a thing, and we end up with a gold standard. With an absolutely incredible lager that I'm so thrilled that Sierra Nevada is going to continue to produce this beer every year going forward, and looking forward to seeing it on the shelves. We hope that you guys will seek this beer out, Sierra Nevada Summerfest. It's a great beer. Hopefully you can find it in a wider range of stores all over the United States. And hopefully, internationally as well. Please tell us what we should be drinking next week for Old Favorite Friday. I want to also mention something. We have been getting a lot of recommendations for beers that we already did. So, listen, we love your recommendations no matter what. We love the crowd engagement. Please keep them coming. But poke around on this channel and see all the other beers that we've done. We've done, I believe, 50 or 60 different beers now for Old Favorite Friday. So several of the ones are coming in. I'm like, yes, that's a great idea. And we did it a year and a half ago. So please poke around, look at some of our videos, give us a like, give us a subscribe, and we'll see you next week on Old Favorite Friday. Cheers.
Cheers.